Alright, so for this video, I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to install some shelving in this closet that I have here. You can see I already installed one shelf. However, that shelf is permanent in the sense that underneath I have some trim boards here that I've since screwed into the wall and then screwed the shelf to those trim boards. So this shelf doesn't go anywhere. However, for the subsequent shelves that are going to go up on top above, we want those to be adjustable. So as you can see right here, I have these brackets that are going to allow me to basically, when I install these brackets on the wall, I have these arms that stick out. They attach, this way, they attach to the bracket, and basically the shelf rests on top of that bracket right there. And of course, there's a side view shot of it. Of course, there's multiple different slots and they can be adjusted to whatever height you want. So when I install this bracket, I'll be able to put multiple shelves on here and we can kind of, adjust them to whatever height we want. So the purpose of this video is going to be showing you how you install these brackets when I can find an available stud, which I have one right here. But when I want to put the same bracket from the same distance away from the wall on the right side over here, there's no stud. So how do I install a bracket if there's no stud? You can't just screw into the drywall because it's not strong enough. It'll just pull the bracket right out. So I'm going to show you how I do that as well. So to start, let's work on the side where there is a stud, and I'll show you how I located that and how to test to make sure that the stud is actually there. All right, so step one, you can see I already have a line here. Is locating the center of a stud, the stud being the wood framing that basically holds your wall up and your house up, that is behind the drywall here. If you can find a stud, that's the best possible outcome, because then you can put a screw right through the drywall and into the secure stud, the wood, and really tighten down whatever you're trying to attach to the wall. That's the best possible outcome. So in order to do that, a simple way is if you have a stud finder. I got one of these stud finders here. Basically, when you turn it on, all right, and you slide it over, you should be able to find one side of the stud and the other side of the stud. Once you find the left and the right side of the stud, you can basically draw a line down the center. So what you're going to do is put a mark where you find this one side of the stud, put a mark where you find the other side of the stud, and then draw a line right down the center. Now I've drawn a line down the center using my level. All right, so I put the level up against the mark, make sure it was plumb, drew a line all the way down, basically the distance, the length of the bracket that I'm going to put on there. So now these stud finders are pretty helpful. However, sometimes I don't really trust them because sometimes they can give you false readings. So once you have this up here, you can do a little test, and that test involves taking a finish nail. Sometimes actually you might even want to use one smaller than this, but this is all that I got right now. And you can basically bang a finish nail right in, and it's one of those things where if you make a hole and there's no stud there, at least it's a really small hole and it's easy to fix. You also want to kind of put it in the area where it might get covered up anyway by the shelf. That way you can hide any holes, any undesirable holes that you've made. So I'm going to go ahead and let's bang this nail in and see if the stud is actually there. So as long as that's in camera. Definitely. So I went through the 1/2-inch drywall pretty quickly, and then I ran into what feels like the stud on the other side. So that's definitely pretty solid. So I can confidently say that there's a stud behind that line all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mount up that bracket. Okay, so I got my bracket in place. No screws in it just yet. If you can see through that hole, you can see that the line is right there, which is on the center of the stud. So what I'm going to do is put a screw right in the top hole to start. If I can adjust this camera. So I'm going to go ahead and put a screw right in the top there. So now that screw is in, I put the screw on the top on purpose so that I didn't really, I mean, I got it close based off of the line that I made, but I haven't actually checked to see if it's level yet. And by putting the screw either on the top or the bottom, you can pivot off of that screw and make this level. If you put a screw in the middle, you'll be able to pivot and still make it level, but it's gonna really kind of throw this out of whack. So I'm gonna go ahead, put my level on here, make sure that it is plumb and straight up and down. So by moving the bottom over just a little bit, you can see that it's now level. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna throw in the rest of the screws. Just a side note, where do you wanna mount? How high do you wanna mount this bracket? You can see that the top of the bracket's pretty close to the ceiling, so even if I put a shelf at the very top here, I don't really need to go any further higher with this bracket. So I'm basically, for extra security, resting the bottom of the bracket on top of the shelf that I know can't move. So that's where I'm mounting my bracket. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put the rest of these screws in. All right, so the right side is gonna be slightly different. The right side, there is no stud here. So I cannot confidently put a screw in knowing that it's gonna hold this, because it's just gonna go into the drywall. The drywall is brittle, it's gonna pull it out. So first thing you wanna do, also side note, again, by placing the bottom of the bracket on top of the shelf, which I know is level because I made it level, that guarantees that by placing the bottom of this bracket on the same shelf, that the brackets will be in line with themselves, so that you know that the shelves that you're going to put on these brackets are going to be nice and level. So as long as this first shelf down here is level, which I know it is, then the other shelves will be level on top of it. So how am I going to attach this? Well, I got these anchors here. I just bought them at Lowe's, and basically what they require is a 1/4 inch drill bit that comes with it. This is not the drill bit that comes with it. I just happen to throw a random 1/4 inch drill bit in here. And 1/4 inch drill bit, you're gonna need a hammer. And what's gonna happen is we're gonna drill a hole. We're gonna put this anchor into the drywall by hammering it carefully into the drywall. And then it also comes with screws that you can mount it with. Unfortunately, these screws aren't long enough for what I want, and the head style is not desirable for these brackets. So I'm actually just gonna use the regular wood screws for this, and it'll work just fine. So I've already gone through and I mounted up my bracket, and I used a level to make sure it was level, and with a pencil I marked through the holes each spot where I need to drill. So I'm going to go and drill all of these holes right now. And here's what that looks like. Make sure you carefully line your drill bit up with the center of that mark that you made. Go slow. You can see that I easily, and you can see there's nothing behind there because I pulled out some insulation that was there as well, but I went through a 1/2 inch and that's it. So there's definitely no stud back there. Now that you have the hole drilled, you're gonna take your anchor. You're going to squeeze your anchor in there as far as you can by hand, about halfway in by hand. Take your hammer. Now, don't go crazy, because if you bash this too hard, you're gonna put a massive hole in your drywall. So just go nice and easy. Shouldn't take much. All right, and there you have it. There's your anchor. That's what that looks like, and your screw is basically gonna go right into the center of that anchor. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drill out and mount the rest of them. Okay, now that I have all 4 anchors in, I'm gonna attach the bracket just like I attached the other bracket. All the holes are all laid out. I don't have to, I mean, you can double check it with a level, but at this point, your anchors are, kind of in a permanent spot now. All right, so basically line up your holes that are in your bracket with your anchors, and go ahead and put your screws in. Now, I told you before that I'm using different screws. You just want to make sure if you're going to use a different screw, it's the same width. It can be longer, it just has to be the same width. You can't use one that's much wider than what the anchor is designed for, or else it's not going to work. So the anchor is not as strong as the stud. It is fairly strong though, but be careful when you install it. You don't want to go crazy with your drill. Your drill is really powerful, and if you go too crazy and you put a lot of pressure with the drill, you could overpower the anchor, because it is just a plastic anchor. All right, but that's in there pretty tight. Even with one, it holds pretty strong. So, but we're gonna put 4 in, and they each hold, according to the box here, 35 pounds each. So, with 4 of them on this bracket and 4 on each bracket, and I'm gonna put 4 brackets total. That's a lot of weight it can hold. All right, so that bracket's in. The next step I want to do now is I'm actually going to put 2 more brackets in. One on the left side, one on the right side. Okay, so there's the bracket on the right side and the left side. And you can see I already installed the shelf supports that go into the brackets. So basically it's these guys here, and they have little hooks, and they just sit inside these holes. It goes in, sits down, and kind of locks in place, and that's it. You do have holes on the bottom here where you can put screws up through the bottom of these supports into your shelf if you want to make it a little bit more sturdy and more permanent, but you know, it's a little unnecessary because all the weight is going down, so you know, but it's there if you want to use it. So the key here is just making sure that all of your shelf supports are at the same height. So I have them set where I have a screw right here, and they are basically 1, 2, 3rd hole down from this screw. So I know it's, you know, easy to line that up. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this bracket in. And what I've done with the shelf is I've actually notched out where the brackets are gonna go. So notched out. A little bit of a pain in the butt, but now that I have this shelf done, I can actually line it up with the other shelves that are gonna go above it, and basically use this as a template. But all right, I'm gonna install that and we'll see what it looks like. And there's the shelf installed, sitting on those supports. Like I said, I notched out these little areas here. And it was kind of a pain in the neck going back and forth to the shop, making sure it was going to fit. Not so much for the notches, but for the overall edges to fit all the way around. And you can see it's not even perfect, and that's due to the fact that the drywall on you know, in your house is not going to be perfectly flat, especially, you know, in these closets that were built out. So it's tough to get them perfect, and you have to basically bring the shelf up top here and slide it all the way down. So it's got to be, you know, the wall's different as it goes down. So it's a little bit of a pain in the neck. So you don't have to do it like that. You can actually just cut it short and have it sit here. But there will be a gap, basically the thickness of your supports here, of your brackets. So I didn't want that gap there. But now that I've gone through the painstaking process of getting this one to fit, I can take this out, bring it into the shop, put it on top of the other 2 shelves that I have, and I can basically trace it out. And the other 2 shelves, once I'm done cutting them, should fit in first try, no problem. So that's it, that's how it looks. And now I can adjust it to go lower or taller.